Welcome to the third episode in a special Legendarium series about the history behind Beowulf. In this installment, we will be taking a closer look at the three monsters that Beowulf fights and kills. Beowulf is an Old English epic poem likely first composed during the 8th century AD in Anglo-Saxon England. Yet it is set over 2 centuries before in the Anglo-Saxons' ancestral homeland of Scandinavia. It tells the story of a warrior named, unsurprisingly, Beowulf, who leaves GEATLAND in modern-day Sweden for Denmark, ruled by King Hrothgar. Hrothgar's great hall of Heorot has been abandoned because of attacks by a terrible monster named Grendel. Beowulf not only defeats Grendel, but mounts his arm above the main door of Heorot. Alas, after the victory celebrations, Grendel's mother comes to take her revenge. Beowulf is forced to plunge into a lake of blood and gore to defeat Grendel's mother and is hailed as a hero once more. Laden with rewards, Beowulf returns home to Geatland, where he becomes king in time. During his old age, Beowulf must face a dragon, his strongest foe yet. While he prevails again, he perishes in combat, leaving his grieving subjects without a king and helpless before rival monarchs which covet the gold Beowulf won. Based on various readings of the text, scholars believe Grendel to be anything from an ogre to a giant to an evil spirit. As the original story could well date back to post-Roman Europe, Grendel would have been a creature of pagan rather than Christian lore. Yet by the time of the poem's writing in 1000 AD, Grendel is described as a descendant of the biblical Cain, and is condemned to be an outsider among men. While this might arouse feelings of sympathy in modern readers, it is made clear in the text that there is good reason for men not to welcome Grendel. The Beowulf poet writes, "Ill fared his feud, and far was he driven, for the slaughter's sake, from sight of men. Of Cain awoke all that woeful breed, Etons and elves and evil spirits, as well as the giants that warred with God." Indeed, the sound of a man singing of how God created the world sparks Grendel's first rampage in Heorot, during which he devours and kills Hrothgar's warriors. 12 long years pass before Beowulf's arrival. To lure out Grendel, Beowulf has his men re-enter Heorot, and they feast and sing to attract Grendel's attention. Because Grendel does not have arms or armor, Beowulf removes his own weapons and armor. Curiously, when Grendel slips into Heorot, the poet describes the scene from Grendel's perspective, describing the monster's sudden horror when Beowulf, who has the strength of 30 men in each hand, grips his arm. For a time, the two titans wrestle, and Grendel only escapes when Beowulf pulls off one of Grendel's arms. The monster lops into the fens, where he presumably dies, while Beowulf hangs his arm as a trophy above Heorot's door. The Beowulf poet wrote, "Hanging high from the rafters where Beowulf had hung it was the monster's arm, claw, shoulder, and all." While Beowulf and Hrothgar celebrate, they do so too soon, for Grendel's mother longs for vengeance. Grendel's mother, like her son, is a mysterious humanoid creature. While Grendel is motivated by hatred of men and God, she enters the poem as an avenger, seeking redress for the death of her son at Beowulf's hands. The Beowulf poet writes of her, "The live long time after that grim fight, Grendel's mother, monster of women, mourned her woe. She was doomed to dwell in the dreary waters, cold sea courses, since Cain cut down with edge of the sword his only brother. In the context of Germanic blood feuds, her invasion of Heorot and murder of Edain is justifiable. Indeed, some epics of Northern Europe lamented endless blood feuds that could be triggered by a single crime and the suffering they brought, especially to women. Before Grendel's mother attacks, the poem tells of Hildebert, a princess who loses all her male relations because her brother's family feuds with her husband's. While this might make the reader wonder if Grendel's mother is a victim, the Beowulf poet does not portray her that way. During her revenge attack on Heorot, Grendel's mother drags Aesir, Hrothgar's most trusted warrior, out of the hall. Aesir's head is later found as Beowulf and the others track Grendel's mother to her lake. With no fear, Beowulf dives into the water. He finds the she-monster in an underwater den surrounded by the corpses of men she and her son killed, along with their arms and armor. Beowulf finds a giant sword and severs her head. Afterwards, he found Grendel's body, which his mother laid in state. Beowulf cuts off Grendel's head as well and swims back up to join his comrades. After this second victory, Beowulf returns to GEATLAND, where he becomes king. Yet little does he know that many centuries earlier, the last survivor of an ancient tribe came into possession of his people's treasure. When he realized it would do him no good with no one to share it with, he buried the hoard in a barrow, lamenting the beauty of precious objects that no one but him would ever see. This implies that treasure celebrated in the poem is only worthwhile if shared and used to promote prosperity. Long after that survivor dies, a dragon chanced upon the hoard and guarded it for 3 centuries. The image of the dragon hoarding treasure contrasts with generous kings who reward warriors for faithful service. Towards the end of Beowulf's reign, a slave fleeing a hard-hearted master takes refuge in the barrow and picks up a gem-covered goblet. By doing so, he wakes the goblin, which flies into a rage over the trespass and theft, prompting the slave to flee with the goblet. Dragons feature in Norse mythology. Neohagar, which means malice striker, appears in the Old Norse texts as an atrocious creature which gnaws the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil. When it finally gnaws through, it would help to begin Ragnarok, the Viking apocalypse. Norse lore also taught of sea dragons dwelling beneath the waves, which is why sailors prayed to Thor and Odin for protection. One can see a parallel between this story and the lake of Grendel's mother, a murky pool of blood teeming with sea serpents. In any case, Beowulf has his own dragon to worry about. The furious beast left its lair and attacked the countryside, so consumed with greed that it burned entire villages to recover a single cup. Of course, while Beowulf defeats the dragon, he only does so at the cost of his own life when he succumbs to the terrible beast's poisonous bite. This fulfills Hrothgar's warning to him, "For a brief while your strength is in bloom, but it fades quickly, and soon there will follow illness or the sword to lay you low, or a sudden fire, or surge of water, or jabbing blade, or javelin from the air, or repellent age." That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.